There's a famous saying that the saddest thing about betrayal is that it never comes from your enemies, it comes from those that you trust the most. And it's a sentiment that everybody is familiar with. Maybe you watched your lifelong sports team switch to a different city, or your favorite athlete switch to the opposition. It can obviously even happen in your personal life with your friendships or your place of employment, but it can also happen with the companies or the brands that we support. And many of us, myself included, have felt that Xbox has slowly betrayed trust over the last few years. And a recent development with the PS5 Pro is pushing that feeling into overdrive for some of the most loyal Xbox fans. Many see Xbox shaking hands with the PlayStation 5 Pro as switching to playing for the team that you've been losing to, which is honestly a tad late given the clear indicators that Xbox will continue to put first-party games on PlayStation and has all but abandoned the idea of exclusivity. But seeing Xbox first-party games get the PS5 Pro Enhanced Label is the final blow for some fans. It creates a clear value gap within the console space. And while currently Diablo 4 is the first and only official announced Xbox-owned title that will get the label, it stands to reason that if you allow one of your biggest properties to do it, then more will follow. As far back as I can remember, even Nintendo and Sega were battling over performance with their commercials. They would talk about things like blast processing, and Nintendo doesn't. And this generation of consoles went from Xbox declaring that it had the world's most powerful console to now allowing first-party games to leverage enhancements on their former competition's stronger box. And you might be saying, well, what difference does it make? I'll still get these games day one on Game Pass, or I could get better performance on a stronger PC, which is certainly true, but even day and date on Game Pass has moved to Ultimate, and the price of Ultimate has gone up on consoles, and Xbox console owners are likely not enjoying the sense that the best console to play Xbox games on will soon be a PlayStation 5 Pro. Beyond that, this situation opens up a whole host of other questions about the future of Xbox and their games, and even their future hardware. Now, every weekday here on Reforge Gaming, I tell you what I think about a gaming topic, and then we go to a live stream, and I want to hear what you think. So, if you want more content like this, hit like and subscribe. In case you missed it, one of the biggest questions from Xbox fans after the PS5 Pro announcement was, will Xbox let their devs work with the Pro and get the enhanced label? There are already differences in games like Hi-Fi Rush and Sea of Thieves, but they weren't earth-shattering, so theories started swirling around games like Doom: The Dark Ages especially. It went from being a title that fans expected to be exclusive to Xbox, well, given Phil Spencer's remarks in the wake of the acquisition, to suddenly being a multi-platform day-and-day release on both Xbox and PlayStation. But would it also aim at getting the PS5 Pro Enhanced Label? Developers love taking their games further, and the Pro has already received high praise from first-party PlayStation developers, as well as a longtime engine programmer at Hello Games. So it stands to reason that devs over at Xbox would enjoy leveraging more power and more features if they're allowed. Well, Rod Ferguson took to Twitter on October the 3rd, and he made it crystal clear. He replied to a question about this topic, and he said the following: I've been getting this question quite a bit recently, and I'm happy to say that Diablo 4 and Vessel of Hatred will indeed be PS5 Pro Enhanced. Very proud of our hardworking team to make this happen. More details at a later date. Now, somebody might say, well, it's a long-standing multi-platform game, this isn't really that big of a deal. But I would push back and say that this is a large piece of property in the Xbox catalog, and one of the first games from the Activision deal to land on Game Pass. So minimizing this game or relegating it to sort of a non-Xbox brand ambassador status, I just don't think that's a fair read of the situation. But it does open a whole host of questions. Will Xbox have criteria with regards to this sort of a decision? Will it need to get the PS5 Pro Enhanced label later and not on the release date of the game? With a game like Doom: The Dark Ages, it seems like an obvious choice to leverage the new tech and the greater power of the Pro. If the devs are targeting the label, will it be something that lands on the release date of the game? Will Xbox even allow any of this to be in the marketing? You just had the senior vice president and GM of Diablo 4 officially announce it 5 days before the Vessel of Hatred DLC releases. That isn't exactly official Xbox marketing, but it's pretty darn close. And what about older games that get ported to PlayStation like Sea of Thieves, or something that's a little bit more recent like Hi-Fi Rush? Or you had your big surprise at Summer Game Fest, Indiana Jones is going to have roughly a 6-month or less window before it hits PlayStation. Regardless of how the timing plays out with old titles or new releases, it's clear that this was unexpected for those who thought the Bethesda acquisition and the Activision deal would lead to things improving for longtime Xbox fans. Roughly 2 years into this generation, I felt that Xbox was not giving me what I hoped for. And when we made it into 2023, I was beyond disappointed with how they had handled this gen. As we close out the 4th year of this generation, many are left wondering if the big acquisition deals have done anything for them, because it's all seemed to lead to more emphasis on things outside of the Xbox console itself, which of course leads to the next big question. What about the future hardware? If Xbox is willing to allow their first-party property to have its best console performance on the PS5 Pro, how does that square with future hardware plans? I continue to see rumors and speculation about 2026, and most of this just seems like wishful thinking or hopeful fans. But let's just say that something is actually coming out in just 2 years' time. Hypothetically, if it was targeting having more power and better performance than the PS5 Pro, why would you waste time allowing your developers to push for the PS5 Pro Enhanced Label? Wouldn't you just ignore the Pro and focus on announcing your new hardware in 2 years and ensure that it's the best console to play Xbox first-party games? Obviously, I could be wrong, but it doesn't seem very logical to spend 2 years allowing first-party games to get the PS5 Pro Enhanced Label, only to try to market hardware that is then stronger than the Pro. So not only does this feel out of step, it really doesn't line up with what Xbox is doing right now. I could see, however, that the Xbox handheld is what is planned for 2026, if it is indeed coming. And that obviously would not be a piece of hardware that would be targeting competing with a high-end console, but many would push back and say, but Sarah Bond said we would be getting the biggest technological leap in a generation, that that's what was coming. And yes, she did say that. However, both her and Phil Spencer have been very careful to completely shift away from saying console, and they're only saying hardware. So whatever they have planned doesn't seem to be a traditional console, which likely means it's not targeting competing with the most powerful console that's in the market at that time. A console PC hybrid with a dockable handheld has been rumored, and that certainly would be classified as the biggest technological leap, seeing that we've never really seen a console do that. A tech leap doesn't have to be in power, and it doesn't have to be in performance. But there is something else from Xbox that was said that we have to consider in light of all of this. But before we do, recent comments from Jason Schreier of Bloomberg are worth noting. He was doing an interview with Lucy James from the Friends Per Second podcast, and he was speaking about how much Blizzard had changed and how the Xbox acquisition had not made things any better.
What do you think the future of Blizzard holds at this point with the current people in charge and with Xbox, and now this, this big exodus of the founders and the big names and a lot of talent, unfortunately, this year?
Yeah, man, if you had asked me this a year ago, my answer would be totally different than it is now, because a year ago, like literally a year ago at this time, October of 2023, they were closing the deal, and then shortly after Microsoft closed the $69 billion deal to buy Activision Blizzard, Phil Spencer was flying around, and he came to Blizzard's campus, and people were lining up to say hi to him and take selfies with him, and he was playing their games. I have the story in the book where he came in and people had prepared like these PowerPoint presentations to show to him, and he was like, no, I want to see the games, I want to play the games, and they were like, fantastic. And he seemed like this benevolent leader who was coming in to save them from Bobby Kotick and his regime. And remember, at this point, because of everything that had happened with the lawsuit, 2,000 ABK, Activision Blizzard King employees had all used their names to sign a petition calling for Bobby to be out of the company, which is unheard of. 2,000 people all using their real names. And then 3 months after that, Phil Spencer sent out an email that sounded like a Bobby Kotick email, sounded like any corporate executive email saying, because of market realities, we have to reshift alignment, blah, 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 and essentially cut the jobs of 1,900 people, including many at Blizzard. And it was just devastating for people. And then since my book was finished, like there's been another big layoff, including many people at Blizzard. Many people on the Warcraft Rumble team got hit, for example. And so it feels like they're kind of this savior in Microsoft has turned out to just be another like friggin' unstable corporate parent. And now we're at this point in Xbox's history where like nobody knows what they're doing. They're at a point of real crisis. And we've reported at Bloomberg, and a lot of people have kind of seen the obvious, which is that ironically, as a result of making this purchase of Activision Blizzard, Xbox is feeling a lot more pressure from its corporate parents at Microsoft, and therefore it is having to show more profits and cut costs and do all the things you do when you're feeling pressure from your corporate parents and your C-suite executives. So nobody really knows what Xbox's plan for the next few years is. I think even at the top of Xbox, they don't know exactly what they're going to do for the next couple of years. And where Blizzard fits into that, I don't know.
And the reason I bring all of this up is because it adds context to why people feel betrayed. So much of what was said and promised by Phil Spencer over the years feels like a distant and faded memory, and not just Phil. This brings up something that the CFO said that looks very, very different now. On the heels of the Bethesda acquisition, lots of Xbox fans and Bethesda fans were curious what this meant for the future of those franchises and games. There were numerous interviews where Phil Spencer seemed to indicate that future titles would be exclusive, and an email from the FTC trial revealed that he surprised Tim Stewart, the CFO, when he told Bethesda that all future games would be exclusive. This was likely a surprise to Tim Stewart because he said something a bit different in late 2020. WCCF Tech has an article from November of 2020 titled Xbox CFO Talks Bethesda Exclusivity. Quote, "We want Bethesda content to be first or better or best on Xbox platforms." And he said two different things that seem to reinforce what Jason Schreier was saying about nobody really knowing what the plan is. First, he said the following: "When we think about Bethesda, it's going to be the continuing to allow, but continue to sell their games on the platforms that they exist today, and will determine what that looks like over time and will change over time. I'm not making any announcements about exclusivity or something like that, but that model will change." And then he went on to say this: "What we'll do in the long run is we don't have intentions of just pulling all of Bethesda content out of Sony or Nintendo or otherwise. But what we want this content in the long run to be either first or better or best, or pick your differentiated experience, on our platforms. We will want Bethesda content to show up the best as on our platforms." Now, this certainly will ring hollow if first-party games, especially Bethesda games, start showing up at their best on the PS5 Pro platform. Obviously, somebody could push back and say, well, we'll still get first-party games day and date on Xbox Game Pass, so that's the best place. But that's not a platform. That's a subservice. And day and date has been moved to just on the ultimate tier on console. So that's not the game coming to the Xbox platform in the best state. It's coming to a subservice that way. So it's difficult to say that future Bethesda titles will be first, better, or best on Xbox if devs are allowed to leverage the PS5 Pro enhancements. I suppose the last bastion of comfort could be that the PS5 Pro Enhanced Label and those enhancements are not allowed to show up until later. So the first, better, or best has kind of an expiration date on it. So my conclusion is simple. Xbox fans should feel betrayed. I know I do. Virtually everything promised about this generation with respect to console power has not come true. Practically every assurance made after the Bethesda deal has vanished into thin air, and the Activision deal has seemingly expedited the evolution of Xbox into a publisher who gives their console consumer base the least amount of priority and attention. So, it's like I said at the opening of this video, betrayal doesn't come from your enemies, it typically comes from those that you trusted the most. And now more than ever, trusting Xbox feels like a mistake. But those are just my thoughts, and now it's time to hear your thoughts. And you can do that in a comment below, and that comment may be featured in the live stream that follows this. It'll hit a card here, and we will pin a link to that live stream below. And if you like this content and you want more like it, please remember to like, share, and subscribe.